gonna get to know you. We're gonna talk it out. We're gonna get to know you and what you're all about. We're gonna get to know just what makes you feel alive. We're gonna get to know how you build, lead, and thrive.
Build, Lead, and Thrive. Voices of the Androscoggin.
Welcome to Build, Lead, Thrive, Voices of the Androscoggin, a bi-monthly podcast featuring conversations with the people shaping our region and the great state of Maine. I'm your host, Susan Rulin, President and CEO of the LA Metro Chamber, and I'm joined by our wonderful producer, Mark Turcott. Together, we sit down with business leaders, creatives, entrepreneurs, and community builders to hear the stories behind their work, what inspires them, and what they've learned along the way. Today, we're joined by Jayne Van Bramer, President and CEO of Sweetser. Sweetser is a statewide behavioral health nonprofit providing evidence-based treatment, support, and hope through community-based mental health, recovery, and educational services. Most recently, Sweetser merged with the Lewiston-based Common Ties Mental Health Services, helping preserve care for approximately 300 local clients, retain nearly the entire Common Ties team, and establish Sweetser as Maine's largest certified community behavioral health clinic provider. Today, we'll talk about Jayne's leadership journey, Sweetser's mission, and what this merger means for behavioral health access in Lewiston, Auburn, and across Maine. Welcome, Jayne.
Well, thank you for having me.
We're so glad to have you with us. You've spent more than 30 years in behavioral health, and your career has taken you through state government, hospital and outpatient leadership, and now nonprofit leadership here in Maine. Before we talk about Sweetser and the Common Ties merger, I'd love to start with the person behind the title. You've led behavioral health work in New York, Oklahoma, and now in Maine. And you've said that recovery is possible when care is evidence-based, holistic, and accessible. So let's start at the beginning, before Sweetser, before leadership roles, and even before behavioral health. I'd like to get a sense of where your story begins.
Sure. So, my first role in behavioral health was as an intern at Manhattan Psychiatric Center. I was in graduate school. I've always been interested in why people act the way they do, why they think the way they do. So psychology was always a passion of mine. So I was working on a master's degree at Hofstra University. I needed to do an internship. They placed me at Manhattan Psychiatric Center. I remember walking on the grounds of that facility and being terrified. It was loud, it was chaotic. There were people tied to stretchers in hallways. Units that should house 25 individuals had 40 people sleeping in them. Dormitories with beds, 12 inches apart. It was a different era back then. And I think I've been fortunate in my career to really watch the evolution of psychology and psychiatry, really, and how it's changed to be more person-centered and more recovery-oriented. I certainly believe in my heart of hearts that everyone can recover and be well. But that is dependent upon a few things. It's dependent upon being brave enough to reach out for help, because it is being brave, it's not a weakness. It also depends upon the provision of evidence-based treatment. We know there is a science behind what works and what doesn't work. And I think, at Sweetser, I say we have a moral responsibility to provide those interventions that we know have a greater likelihood of making a difference.
That's amazing. And, I'm the daughter of a psychiatric nurse, so I remember going with my mom. She worked at Bangor Mental Health Institute so many times, visiting the units where she worked and the wards that she was on, and kind of, even as a young child, kind of really empathizing with what that experience would have been like. But before we get to all of that, I want to start at the beginning because I want to get to know you as a leader. So can you think back to your 12-year-old self?
Okay.
Where you were geographically, and what sorts of things were you interested in as a child?
Oh, that's really interesting. I loved ice skating, and what's interesting about that is I recently took it up about a year ago, and I started lessons again after a 40-year gap. But I would ice skate all the time. I was probably a wild child. I was one of a family of 5 children. I was the middle one. I was probably the most problematic. I was suspended from school multiple times.
That's great.
I was just a little bit outside the box. I did graduate high school early because I think they were anxious to get me out. But then I started college right away. And I found once I really could select the courses I was interested in, I did extremely well in college, where I was an okay student in high school, but in college I did extremely well. And in graduate school, I almost had a 4.0 average. So I think once I got to follow my passion and my desire, it just came very natural to me.
I love that rebellious spirit. I always think rebellious people are the most interesting people.
Oh, yes.
As a fellow non-rule follower, I really appreciate that. Curious, did you have a job when you were in high school?
I did. I worked at the ice skating rink. My mother was the registered nurse there, so she took care of the bumps and bruises. And I was a cashier, sometimes a guard on the ice, and I taught ice skating.
Were you teaching figure skating or hockey?
Figure skating.
Oh, nice, nice. That's great. And did you compete as a figure skater, or just enjoyed it like as a recreational hobby?
I was in shows and stuff, but I don't really remember competing. You had to pass certain tests to move to the next level, and that kind of competition I did.
That's great. What did that early work experience teach you about people, responsibility, and leadership, would you say?
That's really interesting. I think, you have to meet people where they are. I think that the more, I hate to use the word agitated because that sounds like I'm making judgments about people, but I think when people are upset, it is extremely important for you to self-regulate. And, I would tell people the louder the voices get, the quieter you need to get. And it helps people kind of just reset. Also, when you talk low, people tend to lean in and really attend to what you're saying. So if someone's yelling at you, you don't yell back. You get really quiet and talk like this. It's interesting. So I think that was part of that experience. We had this one rule I thought was ridiculous, but you couldn't come into the ice rink unless you paid. And there were parents who would want to come in just to put the skates on. I couldn't let them in. And there was oftentimes people were upset about that, and I had to work skills to calm them down and to help them understand the rules.
It seems there wasn't a particular moment that led you to behavioral health. It feels like it was sort of a combination of things that kind of led you down that path. But am I mistaken? Was there an individual or an incident or sort of a moment that brought a personal connection to this work?
I do have a personal connection, but I was already on this path. My younger sister got her MSW from Fordham University, went to work for about a year, and had a psychotic break. And she got diagnosed with what I believe is the most difficult diagnosis, which is paranoid schizophrenia, because you don't want to accept help. There's nothing wrong with you. There's something wrong with everyone else. Everyone else is out to get you. So I learned firsthand through that experience how challenging these illnesses are, not just for the individual involved, but for the entire family unit, how difficult it is to navigate systems. I had a very high job in New York State in the behavioral health system, arguably the second highest. I was the senior associate commissioner of the public mental health system. I couldn't figure out how to help my own sister. And if that was a challenge for me, what do you think it's like for the regular men on the street, the regular family who might not have, the connections, the understanding of what this is? So I think that did drive my passion, but I was already on this road at that point. I was already working or doing an internship in mental health. I think one of the things that I've seen really change over the 40 years I've been in this field is how people respond and react to individuals who have a mental health challenge. I do think the stigma is less than it has been. I mean, I tell this story in orientation about I was working in a state hospital, and there was a fire in another state hospital, and the headlines on the newspaper were roasted nuts. Now, we wouldn't see that today.
Oh my gosh.
But can you imagine? This is our lifetime. So, I think the stigma has gotten better. I think one of the things that I really enjoy the most is that, individuals who were stigmatized and, kind of reinforced that they were less than, they're now part of the healing community. Sweetser is the largest employer of peers, that is, people with lived experience. And they bring such a breadth of wisdom and just insight into the treatment. To talk to someone who's walked in your shoes is different than talking to a psychiatrist. It's different than talking to a clinician. It really has helped people and inspired people in a way that professionals can't. And to see the change in that, I just feel so fortunate to see, individuals who might have been stigmatized 40 years ago now are part of the healing community. It's fascinating.
It really is. We actually, our whole team, we are a recovery-friendly workplace here, and our whole team just took a training. We have to do that every year, but the training was led by someone who had experienced substance misuse.
Yes.
And I thought that was such a unique perspective.
Absolutely.
I love that kind of rolling in that lived experience into the workplace, I think is so valuable.
And the way our language has changed. 40 years ago, we would say an addict. We don't use that word anymore.
We even changed, if someone died by suicide.
Yes,
we used
exactly.
to say committed suicide.
Exactly. Committed is a crime, so we don't frame it like that.
Yeah, right. Interesting research around all of that, I think.
I love it. And even just, we don't equate people with their diagnosis. I always say you would not say, my sister is schizophrenic. That is not my sister as a daughter. She was an artist. She was a cook. She has a diagnosis of, right? You wouldn't say my sister is cancer. Right. So why is it okay with a mental health illness? It's
just
not.
Reframing the conversation.
Exactly.
You've worked in New York, Oklahoma, and now you're here
in Pennsylvania.
And now you're in Maine. What attracted you to Maine and then to Sweetser? Or was it Sweetser that attracted you to Maine? Or
it was Sweetser that attracted me to Maine, but I spent, half my career, 15 years outside of New York City and working in Bronx Psychiatric, Manhattan Psychiatric. And then I worked in upstate New York, when I was the Senior Associate Commissioner. You work for the pleasure of the governor. So I worked around Albany. When I remember flying in for my interview here and looking at all the greenery and it reminded me of upstate New York, which is, I love the mountains. So I was definitely attracted, and the weather did not fear me at all, because again, upstate New York is not that different, to be quite honest. And I really like the fact that part of this is the first job I've had that hasn't had a hospital associated with it. I've done a lot of outpatient work and residential work, but I always had a hospital. And when you have a hospital, because it's where most of your revenue comes from, and it's where your risk is, you tend to spend a lot of time on that and not as much on the outpatient community-based services. I love the fact that our job is to keep people out of the hospital. I love that fact, because even good hospitals, and I ran some good hospitals, they're traumatic for folks. When that door locks behind you, your sense of self changes. And so the fact that we can really help people be stable in the community and not need that higher level of care, I love that.
That's great. What has Maine taught you personally or professionally since you've arrived?
I have had the best, and I think people would still say I'm a workaholic because I love to work, but I have the best work-life balance in this job that I've had in any job ever.
Such an important thing. Right?
I definitely have the best work-life balance. I still read my emails all the time and wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and look at my phone to see if anything came in. But I don't go into the office on the weekends. When you run a hospital, you're going in the office on the weekends. I don't. That's not true. I go in once a month on the weekends, but I used to go in all the time. I would say work-life balance is really something, I think that's important to Mainers, and I think that's something that I've learned from this position, to more appreciate that.
Well, you've got to have time to shovel the driveway and
and to ice skate.
Right. I guess I'm gonna frame this question outside of ice skating, but what is something that someone would be surprised to learn about you outside of work that isn't ice skating related?
I don't know if they'd be surprised to learn about me, but maybe because I am so work focused, I just adore being a grandmother. I adore my grandchildren, just adore them. It is just, I don't know, it's almost like a redo with your own kids, but they're just so much fun, and just, the gleam in their eye when they see something new or come across a new experience, or you can expose them to something. I just, I adore being a grandmother. I adore. And I am Grammy. None of these fancy words. I just like Grammy.
Yes, I'm the same. I'm not a believer in that. Let the kids make up the name.
Right. Yeah. Or the first name. Some people are like, call me Rose. It's like, no, I don't want you to call me Jane.
I'm not Baba or any of those other crazy
I'm
things.
Grammy. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, well, that's really helpful to kind of frame you and your backstory a little bit, but I'd like to shift a little bit into the leadership. So one thing I think is fascinating, because there aren't a lot of organizations that have a 200-year history, but how do you balance honoring the legacy while continuing to innovate at Sweetser?
That's a great question, because I think part of our success at Sweetser has been to identify the needs of Maine communities and to be able to meet those needs. And that's how you last as 200 years. But I think you also have to celebrate and, just rejoice in your legacy and some of those long-standing programs that continue to be needed and continue to survive. And sometimes you can morph a program slightly so that it meets the current needs, but it still has the historical backbone that exists many, many years ago. But you're absolutely right. You have to celebrate the past, and you have to, just make sure that we're in the people business, and our work depends upon the staff that deliver it, and they have to feel like they're valued and they're celebrated.
Historically, what was the original Sweetser?
Yeah, very different. We were an orphanage.
Okay.
And, our benefactor was someone named Cornelius Sweetser. He made boots and shoes in Boston, moved to Maine, continued to manufacture, got involved in politics, real estate, and when he passed away, he left us some money.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
You have led organizations at both the state government and nonprofit levels. What surprised you most about those transitions, would you say?
I would say that nonprofit is closer to the state. What surprised me most was working for-profit behavioral health organizations, and that wasn't for me. I think
that's surprising in one way and not surprising at all in another.
I can say I learned a lot from those positions, and I've been able to use some of that knowledge that I think has helped make me more successful at Sweetser and more strategy thinking. But at the same time, I think I do have a business head. I understand that at the end of the day, I have to make payroll. I have to keep the lights on. I understand that, you want to end the year in green. When we make money at Sweetser, I want to invest it into expanded services and better staff salaries. When you work for a for-profit behavioral health organization, they take that money and they give it to shareholders who are already very, very wealthy to begin with. So that was not a good fit for me. But what I say to people is this job is most close to what I did in New York, I feel. That, we were all passionate about what we did. I always say you can make money and do the right thing. You can in behavioral health. It's tough, especially if you're a smaller organization, but we're not, thankfully. But when we make money, I want to be able to use it for the good of the community and the staff.
Yeah, so important. Has your leadership philosophy changed over the years? Or has there always been sort of a through line?
I try to give people what they need. I think, rather than having a specific style, like I let my direct reports pick how often they want to meet with me. It has to at least be once a month, but it can be weekly, it can be bi-weekly, what works for you. I try to give people what they need. People at Sweetser might find this hard to believe, but I definitely have softened over time. I was more intense, I think. I've always been very achievement-oriented. I'm competitive, and I do think as you age, you do soften a little bit, and I think I have softened, is what I'd say. I don't know if my staff would agree with me. You don't always have to win, and I had a commissioner tell me that once. And I think that's important to really understand.
One of the things that struck me about kind of learning about your background is you have 2 master's degrees. And one of them, I think, is very relevant to, well, both were very relevant to your work. But can you talk about the sort of the data-based evidence?
Yes. I love data. Data-based decisions are often correct. I'm not a CEO that uses their gut. I want to see the numbers, and they laugh because I'm always like, show me the data, show me the data. Yeah, I worked on a master's in applied research and evaluation at Hofstra. I actually was in the PhD program, and I prepared my dissertation, I passed my orals. I got promoted so quickly with New York State and got relocated. I never finished my PhD, even though I did all the coursework. So that's always been a thorn in my side, to be quite honest.
It could be on your to-do list.
Too old at this point. But I think, I do like data, and I like turning data into information and using it to inform next steps. I think it is critical. Your gut is not always right. So I like to collect data. I like to look at the evidence. And I think, that's important for our treatments, too. Mm-hmm. We need to be measuring, symptomatology. Is it getting better? Is it, are people feeling better? If not, how are we changing the treatment? What are we looking at? Mm-hmm. I think it's very important.
I think throughout an organization, framing metrics around data can be everything from how you're setting your KPIs in your business. And rarely, you can tell the story of your success, or maybe investigate why you aren't successful through data.
Absolutely.
And so many different applications. So
you can learn so much, whether it's HR information, or whether it's treatment information, whether it's volume, where are we seeing the need? What do our wait lists look like? All that kind of stuff.
Bad data, of course, bad data in, bad data out. So always have to be mindful of that, I've learned.
Absolutely.
Behavioral health professionals spend their careers caring for others. How do you support people doing that work every day? So I guess that's just historically really hard work to do. And how do you support? It's probably tough to even find enough people to do that work, I'm guessing.
Our biggest challenge is workforce, and it is the major barrier to service expansion. We work really hard to support our staff. We do things like an employee engagement activity every single month. This month we had all our work around the Pride, but we also did a water hydration contest. So we do things like that every single month. Just last year, we added a floating vacation day to the staff so they could take their birthday or something. We send birthday cards every year. We do employee award ceremonies once a year. We do a STARS program. I do think it's really important to tell the stories behind our success, because a lot of work in our field is not client. We have a lot of back-end work, whether it's IT or HR, and you can sometimes feel disconnected from the people side of what we do. So, telling those stories of, the mother who says, you saved my kid's life, it's what propels me. And we love to repeat those stories, and we love to bring those people in at some of our fundraisers. They speak at events. We have a 19-year-old woman who's going to speak at our gala in September at Brick South and tell the story of her interface with Sweetser, because I think it inspires you, and it gets you to get out of bed in the morning and want to keep going when you see the impact of what we do. We change lives every day. It is just amazing. I mean, how fortunate am I to have a job like this? It's incredible, right? I'm very lucky.
Every leader experiences setbacks. Can you share a challenge that ultimately made you a stronger leader?
My departure from one of my for-profit jobs was a mutual departure. They were looking for CEOs that were more like managing directors and not folks who would make ultimate decisions. So I had some tough conversations with the higher-ups at the corporation about whether it was a good fit for me. And I like to think I can manage any challenge and I can be successful anywhere, but it wasn't the right fit for me. So we parted as friends.
Yep.
You know, I negotiated, and I left. And, you know, what I learned from that is that for-profit was not for me. It just was too much of a values clash. It does not inspire me. And I also...
It just seems in contravention to the type of work.
Doesn't it? It does.
Like to do.
I also, though, don't like working for a large corporation because they might call you a CEO, but you're not really the CEO. Whereas now I work for a board that, you know, I meet with periodically, but I like to be in charge. And I can be in charge at Sweetser. Not without input, not without my cabinet, my executive team, not without, certainly advice from the board. But when you work for a corporation, even if you're the CEO of a hospital, they've got 200 hospitals. They're telling you what to do.
Right.
That wasn't a good fit for me.
What advice would you give someone stepping into their first executive leadership role?
I would say, and this is hard for me, but I would say you need to listen and observe and not make changes too rash. I don't think I made big changes after 6 months, but I really tried to not do that when I first got at Sweetser. I made individual meetings with all the directors, like 40 different people, and met with them individually and, did kind of what's working well, kind of the positive thing, and then where do you see the opportunities, and really just tried to learn. Sweetser has so many different services. It took me 6 months to understand all our different services. We really do everything but inpatient. So I think, I would say that listen, make meetings, don't make changes too fast. Make sure you collect your information and look at data.
Such a good piece of advice to kind of slow it down.
Initially. And sometimes you can't. If I've been brought into places that were, going under and I had to do something quicker. But, Sweetser was not that. Sweetser was, we needed to make some changes, but it wasn't an organization on fire.
Yeah. Well, that's called great insight into your sort of leadership style, but I'd love to pivot a little bit to talk about the Common Ties merger because it brings together so many of the themes that we've already been talking about. Before we get into the details of the merger, how would you describe the behavioral health landscape in Lewiston and Auburn right now? Maybe the broader Androscoggin region, really.
I think it's challenging. I think there is a lot of need. I think, there is access is a problem. I think the workforce is challenging, and we see this in many areas of Maine. But I do think, there is Lewiston, Auburn is a high need area. There's no doubt about it. There's a high poverty rate. There's just a lot of needs in this community.
With that kind of landscape as the backdrop, how did the first conversations about Common Ties and Sweetser begin?
The CEO of Common Ties actually reached out to me, sent an email saying that they were struggling and were looking for a partner, and would I be interested in talking with her? And I'll write on my email, so I responded within an hour, which she tells me now she screamed to the staff that Jayne responded. And we set up a call the next day, a Teams call. And that first call was just kind of almost like a values check. Who are we as an organization? What do we believe? And how that matches what Common Ties believes and what they think is important. And that really, respecting their role and all their achievements and everything the staff have done, and understanding, their passion and their commitment to the community, that really served as the framework for this merger all along. We didn't want them to feel like this big organization was coming in and gobbling them up. We wanted them to really see, what kind of enhancements would be available by them joining a larger organization, and there clearly are some.
When people hear the word merger, they often think first about growth. In this case, what was the deeper motivation behind the decision, and why was it the right time? And it sounds to me like probably a financial motivation.
It absolutely was. I mean, we really wanted to protect a 40-year staple in this community. Yeah. I mean, Common Ties have been providing, mental health, substance use support, housing support for 40 years. They're well respected. They're well regarded. They had 300 clients, 100 of which are unhoused. They had 18 staff, and they were, running out of time. And we didn't want to see Lewiston lose that resource. I mean, we really did want to protect it. And, I think, again, this goes back to Sweetser's legacy of being able to identify and adapt to what the community needs. So whether it was, we lobbied and argued and got the legislature to support, Child Act. We run the only child assertive community treatment team in the state of Maine, coming out of Saco. This past session, we got the legislature to approve funds for a second team up north. So I think, that's just one example of where we've been able to identify what's missing in Maine, what would help, and what we could help lobby for and achieve. We're doing our groundbreaking for our psychiatric residential treatment facility on Thursday.
Wow.
We'll be the only one in the state of Maine that will help us, prevent kids from being sent thousands of miles away to other states for care. I think, we kind of viewed this through that same lens, that we can't lose this service. The Lewiston and Auburn community need this service. So we need to work with them to make this happen.
You mentioned that there were already 300 clients kind of receiving care through Common Ties. So how did Sweetser work to ensure that there would be no disruption in their care?
We worked very, very hard with them. We actually, did really soft introductions. We had their staff come over to our Hope and Healing Center on Mollison Way and learn about the expanded service options that would be available. I mean, one of the advantages of this merger is that the clients will not only have case management, they can have care coordination, they can have medication, they can have therapy, they can have peer support, they can have employment services. I mean, our Hope and Healing Center is the full continuum of outpatient services. So we first taught their staff, what is this? What is a Hope and Healing Center? What will be available to them? And we had them do those initial conversations with the clients, because they could have opted not to come. They didn't have to come to Sweetser. And then we gave them written material and an explanation. Karen and I, the CEO of Common Ties, co-signed a letter to all the clients, kind of reassuring them. And, we started, transitioning some of them even before we did the formal, it was actually an acquisition. Even before that happened, we started enrolling clients in our service. And, it's so nice that they see the same familiar faces. We offered all 18 staff positions, 15 of them accepted. So a lot of the clients, they're seeing the same.
You don't hear that very often.
Oh, we felt, I told Karen right away that would definitely be part of the deal, that everybody will be offered a position. And so that was really exciting. And, watching them integrate into our Hope and Healing Center, and we had to get more furniture, and it's a little tight, but then we had to have a welcome party, and we did an overview, and it's just been wonderful to watch the transition and the integration and how well they're doing together. I mean, they really are one team already. It's fabulous.
Amazing. Yeah. This merger makes Sweetser Maine's largest certified community behavioral health clinic provider. For listeners who may not know that term, what is a CCBHC and why does that model matter?
So that model is the latest and greatest in behavioral health, sweeping the nation, not just in Maine. And we were one of the first in the state, we were in that first cohort, to be approved as a demonstration site. So these were initially fully funded by the federal government. Now we've moved to a model where Maine is funding them. So it's just been like 9 different services all in one place. But what I like about it the most, what I think is the most important piece of this model, is walk-in care. So you can walk into, and we call them Hope and Healing Centers because no one can remember CCBHC. You can walk into our Hope and Healing Center, get care coordination, get an assessment, more like an urgent care kind of thing. So that has just been, a game changer for our communities. Mm-hmm. It's a game changer. But, again, it is medication, it is therapy, it is care coordination, it is case management, it is peer support, it is employment services, it is the whole range of the best and greatest we have in behavioral health in one location. So you don't have to worry about, is my doctor going to communicate with my other, treater, 5 miles down the road? They're all meeting together, talking about these clients. And, it's one-stop shopping. You're going to one place. You don't have to travel to different offices to get different services. So it is a great model. And, it is being used all over the country.
That's so great to hear. When you look 5 years into the future, what do you hope people in Lewiston, Auburn will say this merger made possible?
I hope that they continue to see Sweetser as an organization that is here for this community for the long run, and that we step up when we're needed. I mean, we opened our Hope and Healing Center after the tragedy, right next to, just in time, the bowling center. Yeah. I want the people to view Lewiston as a trusted and reliable resource that is there for the community for the long term, but that makes a difference, that we help people heal, that we help families have hope and support, and that we help individuals and children. We get a lot of kids, that, no matter what their struggles are now, this does not have to be their struggles tomorrow. There is hope, there is healing, and we can help them get there. And I want them to see Sweetser as that resource.
That's great. If a listener or a family member needs help, what is the simplest first step to access services through Lewiston's Hope and Healing Center?
I would tell them to walk in, to show up at 20 Mollison Way, walk in. I mean, they can also look at lewistonhealing.org, which is our website, and there's information on there. I mean, one of the services that I always do like to promote, because it is by far our most popular service, is our peer support line, which is a 24/7 peer support line for adults in the state of Maine. It's low barrier, meaning you don't have to give your name. There's no insurance information. It is 24/7, 365 days a year, and those calls are answered by people with lived experience. We get 38,000 calls a year on that phone. They've gone up, since I've been at Sweetser, we've gone up at least 5,000 calls every single year, which is a reflection of the need. And especially in rural areas where there's really service deserts, this is a great service to have.
Right.
And it's not like, I always like to promote 988. If you're having a crisis, call 988. This is more for that. It's more for support. But these calls last like 20 minutes.
Oh, wow.
And, the individual on the phone might share their own recovery story, give you some hope, give you some directions, share some resources with you. I think that number is extremely important to have and to share. And that is our Promise Line number, which is a really good number to have. That's for just services. Our peer support is 866-771-9276. Again, it's 866-771-9276, adults age 18 and over.
Promise Line, we referenced that. What is
Promise Line is a referral source. So if you want to talk to someone about what service might be appropriate, you can call our Promise Line, or you can walk in.
Oh, that's great. Many of our listeners are employers, as you might expect. What would you like business leaders to better understand about mental health, recovery, and support in the workplace?
You know what, I always say, mental health impacts everyone. It does not discriminate based on politics, geography, income, race. It doesn't discriminate. Everyone is impacted. And, frankly, it impacts things like absenteeism, productivity. I mean, the days where employers would turn their heads away from anyone struggling, those days are over because you won't have a workforce. You do have to pay attention to these things. And I think it's important to identify early that someone is having a challenge and refer them for help. So whether it's an organization's EAP, if they have that, or just, leaving out literature on resources in the community, I do think it's important for the business community to pay attention to this, because at the end of the day, everything is impacted by the wellness of the people, of your employees. And if your employees are not well, it's going to impact your bottom line and your business. So you have to pay attention to this.
And just for our listeners, EAP is Employer Assistance Program?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. A lot of organizations hire EAPs to work with their HR department, and you can call and get referrals and counseling and things through that.
What's one misconception about mental illness you wish we could finally put behind us?
I think there still is.
While you're thinking, I'm going to give you an observation, because I think there's a misconception that it only impacts a very few people. And I think it's a very broad. I think people are good at kind of hiding it, or maybe they have someone in their family who's going through something. So I think it's a much wider issue than we would let on or understand.
I think that's an excellent point. And again, let's look at the data. 1 in 5 people will have a diagnosable mental illness in any given year. So in this office, that's one of us.
Yeah.
1 in 5. 1 in 10 will have a substance use disorder during their lifetime.
Wow.
1 in 25 will have a serious mental illness, like my sister. The data is the data. That is 1 in 5. Mm-hmm. That's a lot of people. It's a lot of people. And you're right, I think there is still some. And what's interesting about that is I'll talk to some of my friends and they'll say, I don't really, nobody in my family has ever really needed services. And then a week or so later, they'll be telling me about their kid who has a therapist and has been in therapy. That is our service. that is a mental health challenge. Yeah. The bright spot on that, I think, college students and younger people are more open to getting help and support. I think, when my daughter was in college, she definitely had a therapist. Half her friends had therapists. Yeah. I think it's more accepting than certainly when I went to school. So I think that's the good news on that. I still think, men have a harder time reaching out for help. Yeah. It's still kind of perceived as a weakness. The guys have to be the strong one. So I think that's something I would like to see changed. When you look at suicide rates, they're more successful with men because they tend to use more lethal means like guns, whereas, women tend to use less lethal means so they can be saved. I think that would be another area.
Where do you see the greatest opportunity for employers, nonprofits, healthcare providers, and community leaders to work together?
Yeah, one of the things that we would like to do this year, and I think it kind of points to those kind of collaborations, I would like to bring primary care into our Hope and Healing Centers. We do, some monitoring of, hypertension, or we look at smoking status or obesity, but there are, kind of routine medical issues. I'd love for our folks to have more regular access to primary care. So bringing that in probably means, talking with some of the larger medical institutions, see if we can do some kind of collaboration. I think that would help. I think that would be a good thing. I think, it's hard for our folks to access, medical services. And again, we do some of that, but not as much as I'd like to. So I think that would be an opportunity. I think, working with schools, getting to kids early. I'm a big proponent of universal screening. We screen kids for, vision and hearing. Why don't we screen all our kids for mental health challenges? The earlier we can intervene, the easier it is.
I totally agree with that. Well, this has been a wonderful conversation, and to kind of wind this down a little bit, I have some lighter questions.
Okay.
I know you've probably been really thinking. Coffee or tea?
Oh, coffee.
Seeing a trend between us. Morning person or night owl?
Morning.
Oh, I was going to guess you were a night owl because you said you're reading your emails at 2 a.m.
I wake up at 2 a.m.
So therefore you are a morning person. Is there a favorite leadership book you have?
I really like The Speed of Trust. I really liked that book.
I've never heard of that. So
it's a great book. It's one that's been around forever, and it's really about integrity in your word and how you can lose that very easily, and it takes decades to regain. So I really did like that book, I would say, The Speed of Trust.
Favorite place to get outside in Maine?
I can tell you what I do most frequently is I walk the Eastern Trail every weekend.
Oh,
but
that's so lovely.
Favorite Acadia is your favorite, but I can't get there that often. I also really liked Rangeley. I went for a weekend. And I saw a moose out there, a real live one.
I live not far from Rangeley, so I can attest to the beauty of that region.
It's gorgeous.
One of my favorite places is Eastport and Lubec.
Okay.
I think if you are not from Maine and you really want to understand sort of Maine,
really,
yeah, it's sort of like, I don't know, it's still the 1950s in a lot of ways.
I'll have to do that.
It's as far down east as you can go, but it's so beautiful.
Oh, I'd love that.
And you can get over to Campobello really easily too, which is great. What's one habit you never skip? Ice skating?
Coffee. I can't move without my coffee in the morning. I guess that would be a habit. I call my kids several times a week, too.
Yeah.
Not every day. I'm not an everyday mom, but twice a week.
If you weren't leading Sweetser, or maybe even in this career, what alternate career might you have pursued?
A daycare teacher.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I like the little ones. I like the 2-year-olds. I like the.
I would have thought you would have said probably a Wall Street trader.
No.
I would have been way off.
No.
Well, thank you so much for this conversation.
This was fun.
Yeah. As we wind down, I'm going to ask you sort of one last question. What's giving you hope right now?
I would have to say. The people that are coming together to see this psychiatric residential treatment facility, the first one built in the state of Maine, to keep families together, whether it's our donors, whether it's our staff, whether it's the state, our legislators, the governor put it in her supplemental budget, we got $5.4 million. That gives me hope. Well,
Jayne, thank you for the work that you do and your entire team that Sweetser does to make life better for people here in Maine. Really appreciate your time.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
We're gonna get to know you. We're gonna talk it out. We're gonna get to know you and what you're all about. We're gonna get to know just what makes you feel alive. We're gonna get to know how you build, lead, and thrive.
Build, Lead, and Thrive. Voices of the Androscoggin.